Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our update on Major Hurricane Beryl this afternoon. It is now one of the most powerful July hurricanes on record, and it is crazy to say, and it is very bizarre that we're having something as strong as Beryl, which is continue to intensify throughout the day today, and it looks like intensification might not be stopping anytime soon. And Beryl, at this point, might go on to become a Category 5 hurricane. It is that strong now, and we are that close at this point. It is looking more and more likely, and this will really begin to be a serious thing as we start looking at impacts past the Windward Islands now after Beryl plowed through that area this morning with incredible strength. Now we got to shift our attention to Beryl in the general Caribbean, including parts of Jamaica and Haiti, where they now have watches and warnings in effect. We'll go over everything. Trust me, we'll try to go over as much as possible as we can with Beryl today. So let's get started with this update right away. I want to start off, though, obviously, with a look on the satellite at Beryl. Quite an incredible storm, especially for the standards of July 1st. We typically do not get hurricanes this strong in the Caribbean this time of year. In fact, we never get hurricanes this strong in the Caribbean at this time of year. This is completely unprecedented that we've gotten a storm like this, and especially now that Beryl is continuing to intensify. As I mentioned in today's update, this morning's update, it underwent an eye wall replacement cycle last night, meaning that it shed its inner eye wall and it basically consolidated a new eye wall. And this is basically part of a structural process that the storm does so that it's able to solidify further and afterwards intensify further, which it is doing so right now. And you can even see it on the latest satellite frames. We see convection continuing to fire up in the eye wall of the storm, and especially the CDO. This is a classic look to a powerful hurricane. The cooling CDO, it is also becoming more circular as well, basically as the minute goes by. Man, this is such an incredible storm to be looking at for July. And the intensity of this is starting to reflect that as well, especially the latest 2 p.m. advisory by the National Hurricane Center is 150 miles per hour. So this is now already one of the strongest July hurricanes on record. Quite incredible to be saying, but it is true. A minimum central pressure of 946 millibars, and it is located at 12.8 north and 62.3 west, and it remains its brisk west-northwest pace at 20 miles per hour. And then we obviously have Chris, which, as I predicted earlier, was going to die out as it continues to head into Mexico. And as of the 10 a.m. As of the 11 a.m. Eastern Time advisory, the National Hurricane Center already killed it off. So this is already dead. Don't have to worry about Chris anymore, except for flash flooding threats over Mexico. And then we have Invest 96L to the east of Beryl. We talked about this potentially being a threat to the Caribbean islands later this week, but it looks like 96L is also kind of downtrending at the moment in terms of modeling. Not really that much certain that we will get development as much from 96L as we were anticipating before, which is obviously good news for the islands, especially given that they've just gone through Beryl, plowing through that area just this morning, and they will continue to have to deal with the effects and try to recover from Beryl over the coming days, weeks, and probably months even. This really was a powerful storm and strengthening storm as well. That's also another factor to consider. Beryl was a strengthening hurricane as it was heading into the islands, and once again, it is still strengthening right now, and it is quite rare to be getting this. I had a tweet from Philip Klotzbach, so I'm actually gonna just do it right now. Had it earlier, I guess I didn't set it up properly, but here it is. This tweet from Philip Klotzbach. He tweeted this morning when the National Hurricane Center first upgraded to Beryl to 150 miles per hour. He says that it is intensified, now max winds of 150 miles per hour, and he also goes on to mention this is the strongest Atlantic hurricane has been this early in the calendar year on record. The prior calendar year 150-mile-per-hour hurricane was Dennis back in July of 2005, July 8th to be exact. So we broke the record for the strongest hurricane on record in the Atlantic this early on in the season by a full solid week, and that is quite incredible if you ask me. And he also goes on to say that Hurricane Beryl has max winds of 150 miles per hour. We know that. Since the year 2000, the Eastern Caribbean has had six other 150 plus mile per hour hurricanes: Ivan in 2004, Dean and Felix in 2007, Matthew in 2016, Irma and Maria in 2017. Quite all of these years quite notable, but especially 2017 and 2004 when we had Ivan in '04 and then Irma and Maria. We all know Irma and Maria all too well, especially from 2017. But they're both of these seasons, 2017 and 2004, are really significant seasons, and it is looking more and more likely that this year is going to join those categories in terms of having the most intense sort of hurricane season, to the likes of potentially 2017 and 2004. I cannot imagine that Beryl is not a sign of things to come, for the rest of the hurricane season. I totally think it is, especially given once again that this is July and we're dealing with a strengthening 150-mile-per-hour hurricane into the Eastern Caribbean. And I'll show you why that we had that happen, and also I'll show you why it's probably going to continue to intensify for at least the next several hours. This is the upper level wind pattern, from the CIMSS website, from the University of Wisconsin. They have really great products. We look at the 850 millibar product very often from this website. They also have upper level winds, and notice right over Beryl right now. Notice where all these upper level winds are. They're kind of in this fanning motion away from the storm, which means that this storm has impeccable outflow. That means the winds in the upper levels are fanning away from the storm, meaning that Beryl is able to breathe. It is able to control its environment around it and basically outflow, as I like to describe it, as it is a way that hurricanes breathe out, like us humans breathe out. We also breathe in. We breathe in, and that is the inflow of a storm. And when a storm has inflow, it obviously rises up into the atmosphere, and it needs space for that air to evacuate outward in the upper levels of the atmosphere, so that storm is able to breathe, produce convection, and intensify. And this is just about the most classic look you could get in terms of a great outflow setup with Beryl, and that is obviously helping it intensify to the level that it is right now with no sign of weakening. And if you look at the upper level winds in the atmosphere, as we head basically into the next several hours into the Eastern Caribbean, the upper level winds remain light. Obviously, there is some easterly shear. There is an increase in upper level winds and shear in the Central Caribbean that is awaiting for Beryl. So Beryl probably won't be strengthening from here on out all the way into the Caribbean. In fact, I have the National Hurricane Center cone, which I should have brought it up right about now. But we'll just show it now, whatever. You could see on the National Hurricane Center cone as of the latest 11 a.m. cone. The update says 2 p.m., but that is just location. But the cone is from the 11 a.m. advisory. And obviously, as we mentioned before, shear does increase in the Central Caribbean, and that's when you can see that Beryl begins to weaken. The National Hurricane Center thinks it'll get below hurricane intensity, major hurricane intensity. It'll still be a hurricane all the way through the Caribbean, which that in itself is also something else incredible for the month of July. We typically we're not even supposed to see a major hurricane right now if we're going by climatology, but we'll have to see, especially because Beryl is stronger, a lot stronger than what anybody thought it would be, especially at this time, even from the National Hurricane Center several days ago when they were only expecting Beryl to be a Category 3. Looks like now we're dealing with a Category 4, potentially Category 5. So I wouldn't even be surprised as if we see some of these hurricane dots right now be changed to major hurricane dots as the storm makes its way into the Central and Western Caribbean. And that'll also have implications on what the track will be as the storm gets into the day 4 and 5 time period, which will have implications on who else is going to see impacts, especially when it comes to implications for impacts in the Northern Caribbean, like Jamaica and Haiti, Cuba as well, and especially the Yucatan Peninsula, which you can see in the day 4 time frame. The National Hurricane Center thinks it'll probably be going into, but we'll have to see. One thing is for sure, though, is that the Caribbean is very warm, and this also goes into what helped Beryl really intensify over the last day or so and become a major hurricane before it even entered the islands. Just look at the NOAA Coral Reef Watch, the sea surface temperature anomalies, and this really explains it all. Sea surface temperature anomalies, especially throughout the MDR and the Caribbean, no matter how you cut it, at least 1 or even 2 degrees Celsius above normal, especially in the Western MDR and into the Eastern Caribbean. But look, in the Caribbean ahead of Beryl, we have those very warm sea surface temperature anomalies, once again, as much as 1 or 2 degrees Celsius above normal. But that persists not only from the Eastern Caribbean, but into the Central and Western Caribbean and beyond as well. The Atlantic as a whole is just on fire, basically, this year. And now we all warned that that would have an impact, and that would play a huge factor into really helping the hurricane season be very active. And now we're seeing the fruit of that, especially that these sea surface temperature anomalies were able to supply for a very, very early season major hurricane. So it is very much of a concern, even as Beryl gets into the Central and Western Caribbean. Atmospheric conditions may not be as favorable, but it'll still be warm no matter what. So that'll not be an issue with Beryl. But once again, we're talking about impacts too, and you do see that there are hurricane watches in effect for Jamaica. And I'm actually really quickly going to read out all of the warnings that are still in effect. Just if you're curious about what areas are still seeing impacts right now, there's still a hurricane warning in effect for St. Vincent and the Grenadine Islands. Hurricane watch now in effect for Jamaica. A tropical storm warning is in effect for Martinique and St. Lucia. And we have a tropical storm watch in effect for the south coast of the Dominican Republic, westward from Punta Palenque up until the border of Haiti, and then generally for the south coast of Haiti, especially because I don't want to try to pronounce this name. But generally for the south coast of Haiti right now, there is a tropical storm watch in effect. So we definitely have to talk about impacts as we get into the Caribbean over the next several days with Beryl, and we'll certainly be monitoring the progress of that over the next several days as well. So let's take a look at the GFS run as of the 12Z, see what it does. As you can see over time, the GFS brings this storm into the Caribbean. The GFS solution, I guess, brings this storm a little bit further south. Regardless, the GFS brings this very close to Jamaica. But this is where my question really comes along, because as you can see, once it gets past Jamaica, that looks like a very, very weak storm on the GFS. In fact, let's actually take a look at the pressure sort of reading. That is 999 millibars into the storm, into the Western Caribbean, I should say. And I don't know about you, but I'm not sure how we're going to go from a 940, 930s probably hurricane when Beryl is all said and done in the Eastern Caribbean tonight, how we're going to go from that to the GFS as it moves into time. By the time it's in the Yucatan Peninsula 90 hours out, it is only 1,001 millibars. And this has huge implications on the track, because if you take a look at to the north, there's a huge high pressure sitting over Bermuda or near Bermuda and near the southeast as well, and that's probably going to bring very warm and hot conditions to the eastern United States anyways. But that also has an effect of suppressing the storm to the south. But you could see as well, if we switch this view over to the 500 millibar height, 90 hours out, there's a huge ridge over the southeast United States. But there's also several troughs. There's one here near Bermuda that's probably not going to have much of an effect, but there's also a trough just north of Texas as well. And at hour 122, when whatever is left of Beryl will probably be in the Bay of Campeche. And I'm telling you, I have a lot of skeptical sort of ideas, especially given that the GFS is initializing Beryl as right now. Let's actually take it into what it would be showing it right now. At 18Z today, it would think the GFS thinks that this is a 966 millibar storm, when in reality, let's see what the National Hurricane Center has it right now. It is 946 millibars. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but these kind of differences really do make a difference in terms of track and intensity, which is why I really do have questions on what happens with Beryl as it gets into the Central and Western Caribbean. But one thing is for sure is that the GFS definitely shows impacts imminent to Jamaica, probably nearby impacts to Haiti. And then I would say, especially if you're past Haiti, so that includes Cuba, um, the Yucatan Peninsula, and even the U.S. Gulf Coast. It is too early to know yet what implications will truly have when it comes to Beryl for the Gulf Coast. A lot of the models earlier in at least a day or two ago, the models were seeming that were looking like they were trying to show impacts potentially to the Gulf Coast, maybe a week out or so, with Beryl, as it would kind of try to turn north a little bit as it gets into the Western Caribbean. Now all the models right now, especially I guess because they really are sold, especially the GFS, really sold on the idea of this storm kind of weakening a lot as it heads into the Caribbean. And then obviously because of that, you could see the huge ridge to the north would have much more of an influence of suppressing this storm into Central America instead of potentially making this bring impacts to the Gulf Coast. It definitely changes a lot of things if this storm does trend stronger, which I think it will, especially given how strong already Beryl is and how strong it's more likely to get. So it's really a wait and see game right now, but I will say, at least at this current time, if you're in the southern portion of the Dominican Republic, the southern portion of Haiti, and especially if you're in Jamaica, since there is a hurricane watch in effect for Jamaica right now, monitor the progress of Beryl closely, and we'll see what happens. But we really can't trust anything. I mean, we can't trust it already, especially given how strong Beryl has gotten, and it is only July 1st. I am sure a lot of things are going to change within probably even just the next 12 to 24 hours, especially if Beryl continues to strengthen tonight. And we'll see what we wake up to with Beryl tomorrow morning. And we'll see if there are any changes to the forecast. The National Hurricane Center is really emphasizing as well with Beryl, and I totally second it, that especially as we get towards the day 4 and 5 time frame, and really as we really get into the Western Caribbean right now, there's still quite a bit of uncertainty with track with Beryl, and that is something that only gets resolved with time as we see how things progress. And this is really going to need that wait and see game, especially given sometimes how quickly, just how quickly things change, especially with Beryl so far, just within a day, even just within a few hours. So we'll really have to watch the progress, and we'll have to see. But it is definitely, either way, going to be a very interesting storm. It is already interesting. It is already a record-breaking storm. And no doubt about it that this storm has implications on the season in the future, especially when we're talking about once Beryl dissipates, what implications does this storm have for how the season will be in the future. No doubt about it that Beryl's probably just the beginning, in my opinion, and we have a lot more to come after that. But let's worry about that when it comes, and let's take Beryl right now, piece by piece, and wait to see what happens as this once again traverses the Caribbean. With that being said, obviously I'm going to have more updates. Not sure if I'm going to do more updates on YouTube today. If so, it'll probably be a live stream later today, maybe around 5 o'clock or so. I still got to see, but I'll let you know. On Twitter, where I will be doing more updates throughout today, I'll definitely be doing more posts as well on Beryl, so stay tuned for that. Follow me on Danilo Evangelista. The same name I have on YouTube is what I have on Twitter. Hope to see you there, and hope you enjoyed this video as well. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, share with family and friends, all that good stuff. with that being said, stay safe, peace, love, and kindness to you all, and we will talk again very soon.